what does the Great Four Horsemen, the bad guys of the NWO, and the drug-free Bullet Club all have in common? The newest 2018 WWE Hall of Fame inductee, JEFF Jarrett. We'll get to that after some more wrestling-based news. I'm Logan Keith.
I'm Anthony.
And this is Pro Wrestling Proverbs. We're about to take you on a journey of wrestle kind.
After the exciting news about Jeff Jarrett, we have a possible rumor killer regarding our boy Dolph Ziggler. It was reported that he was making $1.5 million per year in his new WWE contract.
That's John Cena money.
That is John Cena money. Because Dave Mills reported on F4W online recently. They'd be unlikely because they usually top everyone off at $1 million. So the chances of Dolph Ziggler getting that kind of money, very extremely unlikely.
Yeah, you figured that's Undertaker, Brock, Cena, Triple H, maybe Big Show if he were to do a full year. Not now, though.
Definitely not now. So we'll wait and see if any more news comes out on Dolph Ziggler money.
It also depends on we'll be able to tell around Mania time because if he's
not doing anything,
yeah,
he's making $1.5 million.
Yeah, but if he's in the main event, like the rumor, the triple threat with him, Shinsuke, and AJ, then big possibility.
It's also confirmed now by WWE themselves that dual branded pay-per-views are back after WrestleMania. Every pay-per-view will feature both Raw and SmackDown Live. Do you think this is a good or a bad thing?
Bring back the Raw Super Show, because this essentially negates the brand extension. Like, you have the shows each week, but now they're gonna have to share. Now we're gonna see every pay-per-view Roman in the main event, which means Raw in the main event, which will show that SmackDown means tiddlywinks to the McMahons.
I think we will find out at Extreme Rules, because if we look at the schedule here, we have WrestleMania 34, and then Backlash is going to feature Superstar Shake, which we'll get to here in a second, and then Money in the Bank. The Money in the Bank ladder match will probably feature both shows in the main event. But once Extreme Rules comes around in SummerSlam and Hell in a Cell, right after that, if Raw is still main eventing with Roman supposedly still Universal Champion after he wins at Mania, we'll see. Because what's stopping them from doing Raw versus SmackDown matches, and then had to build those shows eventually, so then the brand will essentially be over. So we'll see. We'll give them some wiggle room here.
I just feel bad if it's going to go back to like it was, because then that means AJ is going to be opening each show as the WWE champion and defending, like poor Del Rio against Royal Rumble winner Edge.
We also want to note that Payback and Battleground have been dropped from the pay-per-view schedule, so those will not be returning. But we are keeping Clash of Champions, which will close up the year on December 16th after Survivor Series.
So those were all the pay-per-views. So are we still gonna have the network specials? Like, are they gonna throw in?
We haven't had a network special in a long time. When's the last network special we've had? I can't even think. MSG with Big Show and Lesnar.
That's true. A lot of these I just can't consider pay-per-views because they don't sell them as a pay-per-view anymore. They're strictly on. Like, so does that mean that since there's the 12-month format again, that they're all going to be available for purchase on pay-per-view to help this supposed financial trouble? Help get Vince a bigger plaque?
I don't think they're in too much of a financial struggle. I think they're doing just fine, especially with the XFL coming back. I think they're still making hand over fist of money.
You saw that plaque at Raw 25.
Hey.
That was not a good plaque. The city of New York did not do well.
We have some more breaking news from WWE. Rich Swann has been released or mutually agreed to part ways with on his birthday. This was February 15th. WWE likes to release people on weddings or birthdays if possible. Rich Swann, as you know, was charged with domestic violence last month, and this seems to be like the breaking point with WWE. First, he was suspended, I believe, and then now they mutually agreed to part ways. What do you see the future for Rich Swann? Do you see a comeback eventually, or is he just out of the company for good?
He was a pretty big guy in the indies. He never really did large independent shows. You never really saw him appear on Impact. I could see Impact swooping in and picking him up due to the fact that they are in desperate need of talent. Do I think he's talented enough to go to a Ring of Honor? No. Do I think he's talented enough or big a name to appear in New Japan? Maybe in their juniors division. But, I mean, this Cruiserweight title has almost meant nothing. TJ Perkins, just now coming back. Brian Kendrick, injured. Um, Rich Swann, gone. Enzo Amore, gone. Neville, sitting at home. Cedric Alexander, did he? No, it was, Kira Tozawa had it for 6 days, and now he's not even in Titus Worldwide. He lost, yeah.
What a drop off.
So, I mean,
kicked out of Titus Worldwide.
The Cruiserweight divisions. Hopefully, my boy Rockstar Drake Maverick will bring in some heavy hitters and make that purple title belt mean something.
You probably need a certain masked luchador to come in to do that.
I agree. Bring back original Sin Cara.
I think things are looking up for Mr. Rich Swann. As WWE's law firm is still helping him out in his domestic dispute, even though the charges have been dropped. So they're still on good terms. It looks like if the money's there, people want him back. I think he'll be brought back.
I don't know if it was confirmed, but I remember reading that his what was she, fiance, girlfriend, that she did not end up pressing charges. That she just didn't press charges, which led many in the online community to believe that this was, as bad as it is to say, an ongoing occurrence of domestic assault and dispute between the two. And fun fact, she is now on Impact. She was recently signed. So, I mean, if they're still together, at least someone's bringing money to the household on a big name company. Well,
big name.
Big.
They're losing names fast.
They are.
They just lost another one.
They just lost Mahabali Shira from Impact. He trained under Al Snow, because Al Snow was a prominent trainer in Impact / TNA. They had their version of Tough Enough. It's been a long time. Gut Check, which saw the likes of Grotto make his first appearance for the company, and it was an alright concept. But Al Snow was mainly there to train the men, and now WWE has signed him, real name Manpreet Singh. Hopefully he's not a Singh brother.
That's what when I first saw that, that's what I thought. Because one Singh brother is injured now, so Jinder Mahal needs somebody to help him out. So signing another Singh he could make his debut right now on SmackDown Live as soon as possible.
And there's another Singh that was also signed. Rinku Singh, the basis of the $1 Million Arm movie that came out, of the players that did cricket and then became the baseball phenomenon, he is signed to WWE. So another relatively large name in sports coming to the company. They just had, and the American Ninja Warrior sign, and now they're gonna have the $1 Million Arm. That is for media sports.
Jinder gonna have a lot of Singh brothers coming up here shortly.
Maybe they should be a 4-man quartet team called the Singhs.
Let's move on. Let's move on to one of the biggest names in wrestling here, brother. Hulk Hogan. New Japan Pro Wrestling wanted him to come out at Wrestle Kingdom along with the Bullet Club. But turns out Hulk Hogan reportedly asked for $750,000 just to appear. Just to make an appearance. Not even wrestle, not even take bumps.
Just to give context, the rumor on Dolph Ziggler's contract was 1.5 million for the year. Hogan, one appearance, 750,000. That's half.
He wanted to be like Brock Lesnar. He just wanted to come out on the Raw and make a big payday.
Yeah, Hogan, he wanted to come out with the Bullet Club. Wrestle Kingdom was a great show. Wrestle Kingdom was a great show, and the Bullet Club had its moments, but the only spot that makes sense would have been for Hogan to come out with Kenny Omega for his Alpha versus Omega match. Spot that Hogan really would have fit because Cody Rhodes, he was in a big match, but he wasn't in anything that would require Hogan. You know, he had recently dyed his hair blonde for the Rhodes name. Then he wouldn't come out with the Young Bucks or Marty Scurll. So really, the only spot that made sense would have been Omega in the Omega Alpha match, which then still doesn't make sense because Hogan and Jericho had like one thing on SmackDown in about 2002.
Yeah, there's not much to go off of there. He would be extremely out of place no matter where they threw him in. This is post match.
Yeah, unless it's post match celebrating, like they did with a certain 2018 Hall of Fame announcee.
Ooh, ooh. Nice tease. Yeah, preach it, brother. We also have a report coming from PWInsider.com. As this is being recorded on a Monday night, we have Monday Night Raw going on behind us. It's rumored that Diamond Dallas Page is scheduled to make an appearance at this Raw in Phoenix. It's kind of weird. This is kind of coinciding with Jeff Jarrett's announcement. I don't know if they're going to be related together because we talked about this before. He's not only scheduled for the Raw in Phoenix, he's scheduled for every Raw.
Yep, that was the supposed rumor. Yes,
leading up to WrestleMania. Where would Diamond Dallas Page, creator of DDP Yoga, fit into WrestleMania plans? Would he have a match? Would he be a manager, a mouthpiece?
What a lot of people forget is before he became a wrestler, he was in fact a manager, dating back to the AWA with Bad Company, former AWA Tag Team Champions, contenders for the NWA Tag Titles. Pat Tanaka was a part of it, great Japanese wrestler, but he managed them. He managed Medusa in the AWA. He went to WCW and had his Diamond Mine, which included Vinny Vegas and the Diamond Stud, who's Kevin Nash and Scott Hall respectively. He also had a run where he managed the Fabulous Freebirds and was their mouthpiece. So it's possible, but there's not very many superstars that I could see him with. Like, people have said online maybe the Revival need a mouthpiece, but the thing is, the Revival would need a serious one, and DDP's not a serious character. Even when he was a bad guy, he was Undertaker's wife's stalker, or a member of the Jersey Triad with Bam Bigelow and Canyon in WCW.
Plus, I think DDP is still a big enough star not to just come back just as a mouthpiece for somebody. He'd have to get involved physically somehow.
Yeah, he'd be a match, and because the only other person that would really make sense to me would be if, because with Enzo Amore now fired, Colin Cassidy now needs something to jump him up, and with the connection, the Jersey connection, the fact that both of them, entered wrestling a little later than their friends, while Cassidy still entered at an early age. It was still later compared to the likes of Enzo and Balor. But, who knows? DDP attaching himself to Big Cass, or at least introducing him, a la Bret Hart introducing Sami Zayn on that one Monday Night Raw. But and then the possibility of a match, the thing is, sure, we're months out and it could be a setup for something, but if he comes out on Raw Cena's gonna fight Taker. Roman's gonna fight Brock. And then out of Braun and Seth, if they're not in the match with Rousey, they'll either be involved with each other or the Intercontinental title picture, depending on Finn. But that's like your 4 main mid-carders from Raw.
I also think we're missing out on something he could be doing, a different type of role. He doesn't have to be a wrestler or a manager. They could bring him in as a special guest referee for a certain match at Mania, whatever it could be, because that's just a possibility.
Like his,
I don't really. My name doesn't stand out for him to wrestle. Like we said before, he's too big still just to be a mouthpiece or a manager for somebody. Just going into WrestleMania.
What if he brought in? I mean, to stick it to Impact one final time, Jeff Jarrett, because I mean they've always been friends. Or what if we're getting Jake Roberts or Scott Hall's last run, and who better to bring them back in than the guy who saved their life? DDP and DDP yoga.
God bless DDP yoga.
It's not your mom's yoga. It's bro yoga.
Please sponsor us, DDP. Moving on, we have an injury update on Big Cass. We were just talking about him as well.
Is it his broken heart because of Carmella?
Rest in peace, Carmella. She is now dead to me after breaking up with Big Cass. How could Big Cass was such a gentle giant? He's such a good man.
I mean, he put up with Enzo all those years.
put up that rapist Enzo.
Allegedly. Allegedly. Please do not sue. What's his real name? Eric?
I don't know. She didn't get his real name right, so.
Yeah. Please don't sue.
But he had surgery to repair a torn ACL that he suffered in a match against Enzo on Monday Night Raw.
It looked gruesome.
It looked pretty gruesome. He couldn't finish the match. Enzo was upset about that on the WWE Network special with Corey Graves. He wanted him to finish the match.
Yeah, Enzo compared it to being thrown on the padded floor, which still hurts, but still being thrown on padded floor, being thrown on a ramp. But I think what Enzo forgets is he says he finishes every match. He ran into the rope that one time.
Yeah, he got knocked out. He didn't finish the match.
Nope. Big Cass tried. You could see it, and he was angry. He said fuck and shit, and you could see it, but they had to stop it. And ever since then, it's a question of what he's gonna do when he comes back, because it seemed perfect for him to come back and squash Enzo. Well, Enzo's not here anymore. He could have came back. They could have put him and Carmella together because they like to do that with couples. Not together anymore. He can't be the giant of Raw because there's Braun, there's Kane and Big Show waiting in the wings.
Yeah, it's very. I feel with Enzo's fighting amongst those allegations really hurt Cass more than anybody.
Yeah. What do you do? Because he can't be a giant on Raw, but you're not gonna superstar shake him up to SmackDown unless at Mania Carmella cashes in on the Raw champion, because they're broken up. So there's no point unless you're Vince McMahon and you like to stir the pot.
Well, he is back at the Performance Center. He's been training. Don't know really if he's taking bumps or anything, but he's been seen there going in and out, which most injured superstars do before they return. So I'm gonna pencil him in for Raw after Mania return at the earliest. He's definitely not gonna come out before Mania because he's not gonna have any plans. There's no place to put him in. Unless he just randomly comes out during the Battle Royal.
That would be a good stepping stone. He could come back, win it, and then.
But it's been discussed that Goldberg is probably going to win that. I don't see Big Cass winning anything at Mania this year, or next year's Mania, or the Mania after that. That's just my personal opinion on Big Cass. Logan's trying to hold himself in.
This poor guy, he's as talented as Shad from Crime Time was. And because his little partner just won't stop being stupid and won't shut the fuck up, he's going to get punished like Shad. And then years down the road, we're going to get an Enzo and Cash reunion that we don't want on the indies.
Probably. I think Enzo and Cass was a big flop on the main roster. I had high expectations from him. One, because they still haven't won the big one when they debuted on the main roster. They didn't win the NXT tag titles.
And they came in against the heel Dudleys.
They came against the heel Dudleys.
I mean, the Dudleys weren't.
They sold a lot of merchandise.
Yeah.
They.
I mean, you figure they had the original soft shirt, which I purchased. They had Cup of Haters.
I purchased that for my girlfriend.
They had at least 2 or 3 different versions of soft.
Didn't they have like the Enzo hair piece?
Yeah, they had the Enzo hair. They had the chains. They had the Colin Cassidy wristbands that said soft. They had Enzo Amore glasses. They had little ornaments. They were the exclusive Funko Pop for Walgreens, which, I mean, to be an exclusive figure, that's kind of important because that means people are gonna look for you. And they sold merchandise. It was all there. It's what you need in a good tag team. You need someone to be a mouthpiece, someone to be a badass, and then like the Rock and Roll Express or the Rockers or even the Legion of Doom in some parts. You need that one guy to just get his ass kicked, so that way he can get the tag to the big man, which is Big Cass. Boot, elbow, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I feel like they broke him up too early, and then I figured once they brought Carmella up and just put her on SmackDown completely away from them, I think they should link them together, have the trio. In their finals NXT, everybody knew Carmella was hot as hell. You can't teach that. I feel like just having her there, the sky was the limit for them, and they crashed and burned.
A fun Enzo Cass story is, I forget which takeover it is, but they're facing Revival for the titles.
They might have been Roadblock. They fought them at Roadblock as well.
For the NXT titles?
Yep.
Well, as a manager, you're supposed to make sure no shenanigans happen for your team. And they hit their finish. I don't remember if it was a tag team or if Cass got his boot or what happened. But then it was 1, 2, and then a Revival guy runs in, breaks up the pinfall, and you're like, oh, can't believe this happened. When they show the replay, you see Carmella standing there clapping and jumping and not trying to stop the Revival guy from getting in. Now, she couldn't touch him because it'd be a DQ. And I know it's wrote that way, that she wasn't supposed to do it. But realistically, she's a good-looking woman. The Revival play big meatheads, no flips, just fist. So she could have distracted him.
Carmella's not the sharpest tool in the shed. We'll put it that way. Speaking of NXT, one of my favorite wrestlers, one of my guilty pleasures.
Why is that?
We don't want to go into that.
Why do you like Buddy Murphy, Anthony Murphy?
Basically just the video game. I like having his tights on my creator wrestler in the video game. And he's engaged to Alexa.
Yes, he is. He is engaged to Alexa. If you watch Total Divas, one of the big storylines is Nia Jax trying to break up the engagement. Am I correct?
You are correct. Because I'm sorry. We are watching Monday Night Raw behind us. We're just trying to keep up.
This gauntlet has been going on for about an hour and a half now. We are at the Finn Balor Elias point.
For you people keeping tabs at home. But anyway, Buddy Murphy will be joining the 205 Live Cruiserweight division next week. Or this week, actually. It'll be this Wednesday. He'll be part of the Cruiserweight title tournament. He is now my favorite.
To win it?
To win it, yes. I want to see Buddy Murphy at WrestleMania.
I want to see a real surprise because 205 Live GM said if I watch each week, I will be surprised. And so far, my surprises are TJ Perkins, because he was brought back, and Buddy Murphy.
I think Buddy Murphy makes it worth it. Buddy Murphy will draw. Buddy Murphy's going to draw to 205 Live.
Could Michael Bennett be a surprise in the 205 Live? He keeps doing these Instagram posts about how in shape he is. He recently did the one about being off of drugs, and I do remember the documentary or the little video that they put out talking about how the sky's the limit, and that's kind of a cruiserweight term. And Mike Bennett did compete, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, in the juniors region of New Japan because him and the rest of his Kingdom brethren, Matt Taven and the like, were considered juniors. So could Mike Bennett be a surprise?
Mike Bennett, it looks to be in pretty tip-top shape based on this Instagram post we're looking at here. So yeah, 205 Live tournament could feature Mike Bennett here in the near future, or he could probably just be on the brand because he has really nothing going on with Maria
No,
being pregnant.
I'm glad that if he did have this addiction as bad as he said he did, that he was taken off TV and now he's gotten into shape. Because watching him grow in Ring of Honor, when I would go to events, when I'd watch the television, watching Mike Bennett lead the Kingdom, if I had to make a good comparison for the Kingdom, the Bullet Club is obviously your NWO or your DX. The Kingdom was a good second place faction, so it'd be like your Nation of Domination. They always went at it, and it was Mike Bennett was a good leader. He had a good little stint in Impact. He had matches with Cody Rhodes, which proved to be well. He came to SmackDown. He had a killer theme. But besides that, he got taken off TV because the drug addiction and presumably because Maria was the big selling point and she got pregnant fast.
Very fast.
But he stays positive about it on Twitter. If you look at his Twitter, people will call him out and, oh, you sold out, or, oh, you should have stayed at Ring of Honor where you were this guy. And he brings up the money he's making, how he gets to travel with Maria, how he still gets to do what he loves.
Yeah, Mike Bennett's having the time of his life right now. So no, I'd rather see Mike Bennett on WWE house shows than working the indies, making
little to nothing.
A fraction of what he's making.
Like even with his New Japan dates, he wasn't. You have to be someone like a Young Buck.
He's got a family to provide for now.
Yeah.
He has a kid coming. Maria's probably still got to take time off after the baby's born.
Oh yeah.
You can't just have the baby and send him to daycare and come back to TV. Okay, that's not how this works. Okay, I don't think WWE is giving maternity leave. I'm not sure. We have to ask Rosa Mendez about that. Yeah, he's got a family to provide for. He's making a lot of money.
Yeah, like I said, you have to be a Young Buck or a Cody Rhodes or Kenny Omega, a top level guy in order to make WWE money outside of WWE. But the difference between those guys and a Mike Bennett is the fact that you can walk into a Hot Topic or you can walk into an FYE and here's all this Young Buck merchandise, here's all this Bullet Club merchandise. You got the bags, you got the shirts, you got the hats. I walked into Hot Topic and they have lounge pants, they have leggings, they have slippers. Each member has a pin. It's amazing how far it's came because ECW at its heyday would have been 97 to 2000, hypothetically.
Yeah.
There wasn't very many ECW merchandise in the stores. There was figures and there was VHSs.
That's about it.
And yeah, you didn't see a Taz FTW shirt in stores. You didn't see a Cactus Jack bat in stores. You didn't see Terry Funk You University lounge pants.
Like you said, it really shows how far they've come.
Mm-hmm.
Because when the Bullet Club shirts first went to Hot Topic, this was over the summer, correct? Probably like June,
Yep.
July, August, whatever. I went to a mall. That's the only place Hot Topics are. Mostly the other places are just random malls. And I walked in there, and then it was about 9 a.m. They just opened, and me and a couple other guys were already in there, and there was a girl in there. She didn't seem like a big wrestling fan, but she knew who exactly the Bullet Club was. So now they're now becoming
The Bullet Club is mainstream.
They're mainstream
with the addition of Stephen Amell, and I mean, he's on the Arrow. The Arrow's on CW.
Yeah.
It's a great television program.
A lot of people watch the CW.
Yeah, it's
Everybody has a season.
the television. The Arrow is probably the best piece of media for that DC had for a long time until Wonder Woman recently came out. But everyone was saying, everyone was saying how DC was better than Batman, Superman, or how it was better than Suicide Squad. The Arrow was the pinnacle DC, so everyone knew who Stephen Amell was. So once he started hanging out with the club again, and now, like I said, you have shirts for everyone. Even Hot Topic had a Stephen Amell Vigilante Club shirt. So the Bullet Club is going to be a force to reckon with. It might not be able to compete with WWE because it's only 8 or 9 guys, but
I would like to see. I'm gonna try to look it up now. I want to see the Bullet Club merchandise sales against WWE, some WWE merchandise sales, because they have to be selling. There's constant Twitter updates from the Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks.
the Bullet Club at one time had like the top 5 T-shirts at Hot Topic, except one, and the one was Rick and Morty, which is a huge fan base. And yeah, like I said, you figure you have regular Bullet Club, you have Young Buck shirt or Young Buck Bullet Club shirt, you have the Hangman Club shirts, Vigilante Club shirts, Villain Club shirts for Marty Scurll, Cleaner Club shirts for Kenny, American Nightmare shirts for Cody, Cody Rhodes 2020 shirts, the Young Bucks shirts in general, the Hung Bucks shirts for the 6-man team of Hangman and the Bucks, the previously mentioned Vigilante Club. And that's just shirts. Then you have the jackets that you can get, so you can be a part of the club. You have patches. You have the pins, the slippers, the lounge pants. It's becoming a phenomenon along the lines. It's like a low level Beatles phenomenon. It's Bullet Club mania.
While you're talking, I did some research here. I looked at Dave Meltzer put on this form that the Elite and the Bullet Club merchandise in the U.S. is outselling everybody except for the top tier, like the Roman, the Cena, Seth, Dean, probably those top main eventer guys in WWE. So it's safe to say that they're Bullet Club's well off now. They're mainstream now.
Yeah, I
think that's great for wrestling as a whole. That's great for the business.
Even the Elite has all their stuff. Alpha Club, which is Chris Jericho, but I'm sure the Bullet Club is getting a little piece of that since he worked with them. It's great considering Kenny Omega had a WWE developmental deal. The Young Bucks had a TNA developmental deal. Marty Scurll had a TNA developmental deal. Adam Page was a frequent on the Indies. They have Ming's 2 sons. They have Dusty's son. So they've all paid their dues. Is what I'm trying to get at. There's not one that just
showed up.
Yeah, they all have worked their way. I mean, they even had Scott Hall's son in it as a junior at one point.
Yep.
And then, as another foreshadowing, they had this week's 2018 WWE Hall of Fame inductee announcement in their club as well.
I say they obviously, there's common similarities between them and the NWO.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, besides their membership.
Yep.
Their T-shirts, that they have the iconic T-shirt. I heard, like when you go on the show back in the '90s, you always try to count how many people have NWO shirts on. Now it shows you're going to be playing the game how many Bullet Club shirts you see, and most of the time it outnumbers WWE shirts at some events.
You're going to be playing the game of both because I went into many Spencer's stores recently, and Spencer's is like Hot Topic's brother/sister store.
Yeah.
They had a WWE section, so I took a look. Retro because Kylie Jenner the one time. So Stone Cold shirts, Ultimate Warrior shirts, NWO Wolfpack shirts. So now you're gonna get people.
She was pictured with a Wolfpack shirt on.
So now you're gonna get NWO Wolfpack and Bullet Club shirts everywhere. Plus the NWO is still one of the top sellers on the WWE shop. I'm sure Nash and Hall are happy about that. Still getting those residual checks. They broke enough necks, and now they just keep on cashing them checks.
Now we'll move on to our final piece of news before we talk about our 2018 Hall of Fame inductee, Jeff Jarrett. We kind of touched on this a little bit before. Superstar Shakeup. It's been confirmed, or it's not confirmed, but all but confirmed at this point by WWE that it's going to take place at Backlash to start off the Superstar Shakeup. Is there anybody that you can think of right now? There would be top guys. We're not going to go through down how I did that. Closer it gets, we'll do our own shakeup. But who do you see among the top group of talent moving from Raw to SmackDown and SmackDown to Raw? Do you see AJ finally leaving and jumping ship to Raw? Seth going to SmackDown?
Samoa Joe going to SmackDown.
You think Samoa Joe's going to go to SmackDown?
Because then he can get his matches with Shinsuke that were iconic in NXT.
Mm-hmm.
He can get his matches with AJ that helped put TNA on the map. I'm sure him and Dolph Ziggler in a kicking battle would be pretty good. Samoa Joe and Randy Orton. Because could you?
I can see Orton or Ziggler moving to Raw.
Mm.
Obviously, people are staying on Raw. Roman, Braun, definitely staying. I say they're the anchors. And then on SmackDown, Shinsuke and AJ probably definitely going to stay over.
If you do Joe and Randy, the finish almost books itself with Joe putting the Coquina clutch on Randy and then Randy maneuvering out of it into an RKO.
That'd be something to see.
And then I'm sure, I think Sasha finally has to move from Raw to SmackDown.
You think you can move Sasha out for Raw?
If they're not gonna pull the trigger on a heel run, because last week would have been the time to do it, either her or Bayley turning, but then instead they had Big Ol' Nia come out and run them down.
I actually see Bayley moving to SmackDown.
It makes sense.
And then moving Becky, or they can't move Charlotte. I think Charlotte will stay on SmackDown.
I think Becky is the cornerstone of the SmackDown division, because they keep you never hear them reference oh, Charlotte was the first Raw Women's Champion, but anytime Becky's on screen, it's there's your first SmackDown Women's Champion. There's your first SmackDown Women's Champion. Remember that time she won that match? So I think Becky is your what's a good. If you go back to the SmackDown 6, Becky's kind of your Kurt Angle, where she's there, but you don't really associate her with it. Like, you always thought Edge and Mysterio, the Guerreros, even Taker. But then Kurt was always, he wasn't an afterthought. But that's what Becky's going to be. She's going to be the pinnacle SmackDown performer.
So, with Becky staying, and you think Sasha can move to SmackDown, awesome. That has to be some sort of trade-off.
I'd have Natty go to Raw.
Natty? I was thinking Naomi. I think Naomi's...
It could be, but I feel like that Samoan Dynasty has enough pull where that marriage is going to stay intact on SmackDown.
What? The Usos could jump too.
The Usos in the New Day have to. I like the Usos and New Day match, but that can't be something that's just... Because if they're there, then it's just going to allow SmackDown... They'll pigeonhole themselves. It'll be, by the time it's said and done, each team will have each respective tag title 10 times.
Yeah.
And it's time for some new blood. Because that's kind of what the SmackDown tag division was. It was all about the new blood.
I can see the Revival jumping to SmackDown. Because they're just kind of trading water right now. Unless they win the Raw tag titles at Mania for some reason. I see them jumping.
You figure, too... The Authors of Pain are probably going to move up in the Superstar Shakeup. There's a chance that the Undisputed Era moves up. So there's 2 good teams. Sanity has a chance of moving. So there's 3. Probably 2 of those 3 are going to come up for it. Also, you're going to have Royce and what's the other one? The 2 women.
Billy Kay?
Yeah. They're probably going to come up. I heard ramblings of McIntyre since his time got cut short, but he really didn't need it too much anyway.
Yeah, I can see him coming up.
And then I personally think the Velveteen Dream should, since we still haven't had Gold Dust reveal to us who he's been watching. He keeps hinting at it even today on Twitter.
Well, we all know Goldust is involved in many of these angles that lead nowhere. So I wouldn't. Goldust Velveteen Dream duo or even rivalry will be something to see if he does come up.
Have them and have Mandy Rose split, and then have them just be a 3-person group of crazy, since that's their commonality.
Well, let's not get too much into the Superstar Shakeup. I feel like we've already said enough, especially if we want to do a Superstar Shakeup preview as we get closer to Backlash.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's move on to our main story of the day. Good old Double J, Jeff Jarrett, iconic career, probably one a cornerstone of wrestling in the 80s, 90s, and even the 2000s as he got older.
Yes.
Horseman had a really good run in WWF. Part of the NWO and WCW.
The attempted revival of the NWO, and then a part of an honorary member of the Bullet Club one night in New Japan. So he's a part of 3 of the biggest. And then even if you want to go deeper, he had a good rivalry with DX. So he's been involved. You figure even people he's wrestled against. Jerry Lawler in his heyday. Kurt Hennig. He had Hogan in WCW. Goldberg. Sting. AJ Styles. Samoa Joe. Ric Flair.
He's wrestled just about everybody.
Pretty much. And I mean, and it all started because his dad, Jerry Jarrett, who was a big time promoter, the territory days. Jerry did the Memphis territory, which was Jerry Lawler's big time run. Jeff kind of grew up there. He became more into it when Jerry Jarrett brought in Fritz von Erich's promotion. He purchased it, WCCW. So then that became the USWA, where Jeff Jarrett became a 10-time Southern Heavyweight Champion and a 15-time Tag Champion for the USWA. 2 of those times with Matt Bourne, who would later become Doink. Mm-hmm. 4 of those times with Jerry Lawler, and 2 of those times with Brian Christopher, who would later become a Grandmaster Sexay. He was a cornerstone of the USWA, and I don't blame Jerry Jarrett for having his son do it, because in every wrestling documentary you see about a promoter, they put people as champions who they can trust. Your son's not going to leave you.
Yeah. Jeff Jarrett, he was a great wrestler. He had multiple championship. He was the NWA World Champion 6 times.
All of those during his TNA run, but still, the NWA title's still prominent even today. He did have the NWA Southern Heavyweight Championship. Oh, it was the North American Championship when WWE brought in the NWA Invasion in the 90s, involving Jim Cornette, Barry Windham, the Rock and Roll Express, and the Heavenly Bodies was who was brought in for the NWA Invasion. That eventually flopped, but during that, Double J cut one of the first shoot promos on live TV. Many speculate that it is because Vince wanted him to get over. He was bringing someone over from the other side. This was shortly after his 4 Horsemen run, which didn't go as well. He's remembered as one of the less favorable Horsemen, but still, he was a member at that time. There was 5 members. There was Flair, Anderson, Benoit, Dean Malenko, Steve McMichael of the Chicago Bears 85 fame, and then Double J. He had a U.S. title then, but yeah, that first real shoot it ended with him getting stunned, which a lot of segments did then, but it kind of went nowhere. His WWF, he did some DX. He feuded with DX. He got his head shaved by X-Pac in a match at a SummerSlam. It was a pretty good match. He had Intercontinental titles. He had
6 of them, right?
Yes, 6 NWA. That was the record until Chris Jericho broke it, and he is.
And it's been tied by The Miz.
Yep. He had tag titles with Owen before Owen tragically passed away. They were a great tag team. They were both traditional wrestlers. Owen being 2nd generation, Jeff Jarrett technically 3rd. His grandfather wrestled before Jerry did, and then Jerry was involved in it. But his WWF run, he was a good mid carder for the company. Never really main talent.
Well, he didn't need to be that at that time either.
No, you had many more above him.
You had H, Austin, Rock, Mankind. Jeff Jarrett isn't going to be top no matter what he's done. But he served his role. He served his role definitely.
And then he went back to WCW. But before he left, he was involved in one of the more memorable Intercontinental title matches with China. He was the one that China beat for the Intercontinental title. So again, a part of history. Then he goes to WCW.
That match probably solidified China's career.
Yeah.
She wasn't just DX's
woman. Valet.
She's now somebody.
And then in WCW, he was a part of other, even though they're more infamous, but they were still important events, like the fateful night where he laid down for Hulk Hogan for the title, and then everything changed in the company when Russo and Bischoff they essentially hit reset on the WCW universe, and that was the last time we saw Hulk Hogan in WCW. He was also there, as we said, the NWO reunion with Scott Steiner, Bret Hart, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall. On paper, great team. Didn't work out. NWO 2000 was a flop because Hall battled his drug problems.
Yeah.
Bret Hart got concussed by Goldberg. So that left Kevin, Jeff, and Scott, and they couldn't continue it. And then he was also involved in probably the most infamous WCW angle. Jim Ross and Jim Cornette, as well as many others, have said that it attempted to kill the business when David Arquette won the WCW title. Jeff Jarrett was involved. Jeff Jarrett was a main event player at that time. His tag team partner was Eric Bischoff, who was the one that took the pin. Jeff Jarrett was pinning DDP at the same time, but DDP's ex-wife now, Kimberly, was the special referee and counted David Arquette for the win. This was done because of the WCW movie Ready to Rumble, which then coincided with Jeff Jarrett winning a triple threat match with DDP and David Arquette. As WCW champion, he ended up winning it. It was up there because that was 2 reigns, and so he had it 4 times. He was a main event at the ending stages of WCW. You can say between him, Scott Steiner, DDP, and Booker T, you probably had your mainstays at the end. And then after WCW, took a couple years, wrestled in indies of sorts, wrestled around the world.
Well, I was waiting for you because I want to skip over this because when I think of Jeff Jarrett, this is probably the moment I think of back when WCW got purchased by WWF and Vince McMahon. Vince fired Jeff that night.
He certainly did. He
personally fired Jeff Jarrett
on screen. This is due to rumored heat because of Jeff Jarrett's last night, that night with China. His contract actually expired that Sunday. Vince Russo left WCW, or left WWF that Sunday, went to WCW. The rumor is Jeff Jarrett held up Vince McMahon for an extra $300,000 to drop the title to China, or else he would take it to WCW. And at that time, the Intercontinental title was huge.
Yes.
It was
not watered down like it is today.
It was huge. Just around that time, China, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho, X-Pac, Jeff Jarrett, just to name some that held it within the years of this happening. Jeff Jarrett has recently, and also back in 2006, 2008, said that he did not hold up Vince, that he did get a couple extra things for it. He got some stocks, which became publicly traded soon after this. But that is the rumor as to why Vince McMahon publicly fired Jeff, why he chose him, because it makes an impact. You can't publicly fire Vince Russo. Right. No one cares. But you publicly fire former WCW heavyweight and United States champion Jeff Jarrett. That means something.
Well, no. If you try to hold Vince McMahon for money, it doesn't work out for anybody.
No. Ask the Warrior. Ask Nails. it just he lets you do your thing, and then he, as he said in Self Destruction: The Ultimate Warrior, I let it happen because I knew exactly what I was going to do to him when he came back through that curtain.
Fire your ass.
But after WCW, Jeff Jarrett got a part of the National Wrestling Alliance, which kind of had died down after Ted Turner purchased WCW, and he created, out of the ashes of WCW and ECW, TNA, which used Ring of Honor as a development system.
Mm-hmm.
While in TNA, that is when he won his NWA titles.
That's not, even though TNA is a joke now,
Let's not discredit it.
Yeah, it was huge. TNA was huge. Not saying that it was going to start another Monday Night War or anything, but when they went head to head with Raw, that was big. It could have been.
TNA was a place for veterans to go who still had some gas in the tank, or that didn't want to go to WWE, like Sting.
Mm-hmm.
It was also a place for up and coming stars to debut. Jeff Jarrett was one of the people that looked specifically for talent. On the TNA Year One DVD, he talked about how him and Jeremy Borash both went to a independent wrestling show to watch a match between James Storm and Chris Harris, who both would go on to be in TNA, one of TNA's most recognizable tag teams, America's Most Wanted. James Storm, who would go on to have later success with Beer Money and as TNA champion. But Jeff Jarrett helped their careers just in TNA. You figure just in those first couple of years, he helped AJ Styles move up, Daniels move up, Samoa Joe coming from Ring of Honor to TNA after his undefeated streak. He helped Kaz get rid of that stench that he had from just wrestling on Velocity. He helped Gail Kim become one of the most talked about women's performers. And then he also brought to light James Storm and Chris Harris, as I said. Abyss, which became a remarkable character in the early days of TNA. And then even Bobby Roode, who is now the WWE United States champion, and Magnus, who is the current NWA heavyweight champion. While also in TNA, he gave new life to Kevin Nash,
yep.
Scott Steiner, Booker T, other veterans. Mick Foley won another heavyweight championship there and showed he still had some in the tank. The Dudley Boys went there.
Bubba Dudley probably shined.
Yeah.
He had a bright singles career in TNA.
He gave Christian a new platform, got him out of the mid card, got him become heavyweight champion. Mm-hmm. Same with Raven. Not saying ECW wasn't respectable, but after he left ECW, WCW and WWF didn't vary him too well. Went to TNA, won the heavyweight title. Rhino won the heavyweight title there. Rob Van Dam, after leaving WWE for a couple of years, towards the end of Jarrett's stint at the top of TNA, won the heavyweight title. And Sting, without TNA, we wouldn't have saw Sting until Survivor Series. But instead, he was on Impact each and every week, winning the heavyweight title, feuding, having legendary matches with Kurt and Jarrett, even the match with Mick Foley, where I said he won the title. Jeff Jarrett was influential. He gave the Hardys a home,
yep.
Which created... he was not there when it happened, but it created the Broken Universe due to the fact they signed with him. It gave them help during their drug addiction as well. They both became clean there. Both have stayed clean.
Even after that famous Victory Road incident.
Yep, even after they both became clean. They both stayed. That's Matt Hardy probably now in his most favorable gimmick. And without TNA, you wouldn't have had that platform. One of Dave Meltzer's highest rated matches came from TNA in the form of Daniels, Samoa Joe, and AJ Styles.
Yes. TNA, if it wasn't for TNA, people like AJ Styles and Samoa Joe, they wouldn't have like that platform to be able to go on and do the great things they did.
Yeah.
Like Styles in Japan, and eventually Joe in NXT, and then so on.
Yeah, because at that time, that was before Ring of Honor was big.
Yep.
So, like I said, Ring of Honor was just the developmental company for TNA. Sure, some mistakes were made character-wise, like with Marty Scurll being a Jersey Shore character when he was there, or the use of some of the Japanese and Mexican talent. But every company makes those kind of flubs. Jeff Jarrett just helped accentuate the positives And for a long time, people thought they could be a commendable number 2. It helped Ron Killings. He was
and they were commendable number 2 for many years. It's just recently
after, and I'll stand by this, after Jarrett left majority share, that is when it went down. When Dixie Carter and Russo and the people that were brought in around that time took over, that is when it went down. That's why even the resurgence that happened lately with Impact catching some steam, Jarrett was there with his GFW company, but then they terminated the partnership, and now it's starting to, people are leaving because Jarrett's not there.
Yeah.
Jeff Jarrett's a great mind for the sport. While in TNA, he created the King of the Mountain match, which is similar to Money in the Bank, but the thing is, it's 6 to 7 people, and there's a title belt that you can grab, but you can only grab it once you've pinned or made someone submit. They get put in a cage, so that way, and it's like a penalty box for 2 minutes. So it's a whole different concept that he helped create. And also while there, he went down to the Mexican promotion AAA, became their mega champion, won the Rey de Reyes, which is their version of King of the Ring. Jarrett, even while doing everything with TNA, stayed a prominent fixture in wrestling. And he helped, like we said, he gave the platform to people. Besides everyone in TNA, I think he gave the platform to Road Dogg to be the roadie when he was in WWE, to Brian Christopher when he teamed with him. He was one of the first people to face Goldust, so it helped establish the Goldust character. Chyna, obviously. Booker T and Scott Steiner, both in main event fashion in WCW, because sure, they were tag team stars, but they still hadn't reached, they'd won mid-card, but they hadn't reached that point yet, and Jarrett was there for that. Jeremy Borash, a recent WWE signee for Backstage, was Jeff Jarrett, essentially Jeff Jarrett's Pat Patterson in TNA. He was the guy that he would filter ideas through, and he would tell them to Jeff, and he helped bring him up. There's just so many. You can still see the influence of Jarrett today, even though it's not as pronounced as a Vince McMahon or a Paul Heyman. It's still pretty apparent in the sport.
Jeff Jarrett's very deserving of this Hall of Fame induction, and it's very fitting as we're talking about this. The Hall of Fame video has been playing behind us. I know you guys can't see it. We're working on a video edition, but
that's another name that I just. Edge won his first singles championship from Jeff Jarrett at a house show, Intercontinental Gold. He only held it for 2 days, but still, Jarrett helped people pay their dues and work their way up. And he always, if you want to see essentially the youngling versions of WWE talent, find a way to watch those weekly pay-per-views of NWA TNA.
Yep.
Watch X Division AJ Styles. Jump to 2006, 2007. Watch Samoa Joe out of Ring of Honor. Go to 2006 and 2007 as well. Watch Christian in the main event scene. Watch Kurt Angle come back after his drug addiction. Watch Bobby Roode and Eric Young debut as parts of Team Canada. Gail Kim become the fixture of TNA's women's wrestling. There's just so many. Abyss be the hardcore icon that they needed, and then his legendary matches with ECW legends like Rob Van Dam, Mick Foley, Raven, Sabu, Tommy Dreamer, and both Dudleys. It's Jeff Jarrett being one of the TNA Hall of Famers that is now in the WWE Hall of Fame makes sense.
As he joins Sting, Kurt Angle,
the Dudley
and
Boy.
now the Dudleys. They've been inducted this year as well as TNA and WWE Hall of Famers.
The only one that is not there, which I don't think she will get it, is Gail Kim, and it's because her WWE run was not great. I will say, and I think it's a high chance now, but if WWE absorbs TNA's video library and their history, Gail Kim will go in for sure.
Earl Hebner is in the TNA Hall of Fame, but like I said, WWE hasn't really inducted officials.
No, he would be one of the first though.
Earl, yes, definitely. Earl Hebner, especially with his major role in the Montreal Screwjob.
The screw job and the Hulk Hogan screw job.
The Hulk Hogan Screwjob. Yep.
He was a part of a lot. Plus all those fun little gifs and videos you see of him shoving Triple H.
he was great. Earl was great.
But back to the matter of Jarrett, like he was such a large fixture in the beginnings of Monday Night Raw. He was a large fixture in the Monday Night Wars because he was a talent that jumped back and forth. And we got to see that even if you didn't work out somewhere, you could end up somewhere else. And as we said, the end of WCW, he's in the main event. The good old days of TNA, he was in the main event. And a part of the Horsemen, the NWO, and then the honorary Bullet Club member with AJ Styles. Jeff Jarrett will forever be strutting once he gets his Hall of Fame ring. And it excites me as a fan because then I think more Memphis wrestling, because his father owns it, will appear in the library. I'm sure he has to own a majority of the TNA library. I mean, Dixie Carter has already appeared in WWE documentaries.
Yes.
So you'll have Dixie, Jeff, and Jeremy Borash, the three big names. I'm sure we'll see some the monthly pay-per-views that we got to see, as I said before, the major debuts of Styles and Joe and Storm, Young, and Rude. Jeff Jarrett has the stroke.
Just to wrap things up, I'll read just to put an emphasis on how big Jeff Jarrett is. Even though he wasn't big, he was definitely not the headliner, but he's definitely a very deserving member of this class. Big name in this class. He's a Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame member. He was in the WCW Hall of Fame, the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame, the NWA Hall of Fame, the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, the Hardcore Hall of Fame, the AAA Hall of Fame, and now in 2018 he'll be inducted to the WWE Hall of Fame. Who do you think's inducting him? Kurt? Yeah, Kurt Angle inducting Double J?
I feel like his dad should, but they wouldn't do that. I wouldn't be surprised if the Road Dogg did it because of his roadie character. Or, who knows, it could be an AJ Styles or a Dixie Carter even, or one of the Mexican or Japanese stars that he helped integrate into American society, because that's one more thing on Jeff.
Do you think they'd let Dixie Carter induct him into the Hall of Fame?
I think so.
I hell will freeze over when I see that day.
But I think so. Like I said, one more nail in the coffin of TNA. I mean, nobody's there for it anymore. Billy Corgan's doing NWA. The big TNA people are in WWE. I mean, as much as I want to see TNA prosper, I think with NWA coming up, it's not even a number 3 anymore, or a 4, or a 5.
So, just before we close out here, since this is our very first, I feel like we should give the people a chance to know us a little bit better. So, Logan, why don't you tell me a couple? We don't need to give a specific number. If you have a couple all-time favorites, give me your all-time favorite professional wrestlers, your current favorite pro wrestlers in any promotion. You don't have to do just WWE. I know you like a lot of wrestling. You're very traversed in pro wrestling. And then give me a guilty pleasure. Who is somebody you like that you don't really like to tell people that you like?
Let's see. For favorites all time, I enjoy Ric Flair, especially his NWA days. Anytime I get to watch a good Bruno Sammartino match. The Legion of Doom are up there in tag teams for me as teams, as just superstars in general that I like. And the Fabulous Freebirds, especially Michael Hayes. He was the walking, talking Skywalker before Enzo Amore was even thought of. And then for currents,
well, let me give my all-time.
Okay.
Okay. My number one all-time favorite, because he's the one who got me into pro wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
When my brother would be just was watching WWE. He wasn't that big of a wrestling fan, but I think he was everybody was watching back in 97, 98, 99.
Yeah.
So when I saw it on, I was instantly drawn to The Rock.
Okay.
So The Rock is probably that's I know that's such a generic answer. Everyone's I love The Rock, but I always have him as my number one just because of that reason. When I was little, I'd have my Scooby Doo underwear on. And I pretend I was The Rock. I'm pretty sure my dad still has home videos of me on the edge of the couch doing the pose. So he's my number one all-time favorite. I know he's retired. Well, left now. I don't know. He might come back. He's in UFC. CM Punk. I'll put him in number 2 because he's the one who got me back into wrestling in 2011. As a lot of people did. That's the story for a lot of people. With the pipe bomb. The funny thing is, I actually watched that live. For some reason, in 2011, I haven't watched wrestling about like a year and a half at the time. Remember like the last wrestling I started watching after WrestleMania 24, I believe, sometime around then, because I don't remember any build up to 25.
Yeah.
So I just happened to I saw Raw on a TV guide and it was like 10:55, so I decided to turn it on, and I got to see CM Punk's pipe bomb. I'm trying to think of a third all-time favorite. I'd probably actually, you know what, we'll keep those 2 at all time because most of mine fall into the current now. So I want to give me your current favorite wrestlers on Raw, SmackDown, New Japan, Ring of Honor.
I think one that fits into current as well as favorite all time is The Undertaker. And that's why I didn't mention him in all time, because the ones that I mentioned in all time, as I said, Bruno, Flair, the Freebirds, and the Legion of Doom, all are very well retired. I could even throw the Dudleys in there, since it seems they're only going to come back for celebrations. But for current, let's see, there's no one in Impact that I just love. Ring of Honor, I really like the tag team, the Briscoes. WWE, for female competitors, there's Asuka and Becky. I enjoy Cesaro, Dolph Ziggler, Shinsuke, and Kevin Owens. For New Japan, Kenny Omega, and I guess you'd say Chris Jericho right now. He's both.
Yeah.
He's the mainstream guy. And
I really like that. Just a side note, I like how a lot of these guys are going back and forth.
Yeah.
Like Chris Jericho, he wrestled Wrestle Kingdom. He should have been Raw 25.
Yep.
Rey Mysterio has a 1-match contract right now with New Japan.
Yep.
He's probably going to be on 205 Live, Raw, maybe WrestleMania. I just really like that this is becoming a standard now, but you can continue.
I hope Adam Cole does well at NXT. I also like the Authors of Pain. But then, yeah, Omega and Jericho definitely are 2 big ones for New Japan. I also really like Cody Rhodes. I had to sit and cringe while he was Stardust. We had a third roommate that would make fun of Stardust and would say how good Stardust was. Oh, I love Stardust. Ooh. And then making fun of him the entire time. But now you get to watch him be the son of Virgil Runnels, the son of Dusty Rhodes.
This is the character he should have had from the beginning.
And then, who would you say are your current favorites?
My favorite currents? I didn't put Dan Bryan all time, like you said. He's still kind of current. He might be back, may not be. Who knows what's going on with that? Again, with you, Undertaker, just because he just means so much to the business. Who doesn't like the Undertaker? Everybody loves the Undertaker. I like Jeff Hardy. I like him now. I liked him in the 90s. I didn't like him as a singles competitor in the mid 2000s.
Okay.
Just because I don't know. It just something. I'm weird, I guess. Everybody loved Jeff Hardy.
The charismatic enigma.
Yeah, I just hate that word. That word irks me. On Raw and SmackDown, WWE, obviously, AJ, Finn, Joe. I really love Braun Strowman right now.
Okay.
I think he has the potential to be an all-time great. Don't quote me on that. It's still very early.
I think it could happen though.
He has all the charisma. He's talented. He's a brawler. He's an ass kicker. He's not That's what. That's what. Think of major mega superstars, right? They're not technicians,
No.
right? That's why
Yeah, you're either
Bret Hart is probably the closest you got
yeah,
to like mega superstars. He appeared on The
because
Simpsons and
because
Mad TV and stuff like that. But
yeah, because Bruno wasn't a technician, Hogan wasn't, Austin wasn't. Yeah, pretty much you have Flair, Hart. You can kind of say Michaels, but yeah, there hasn't been.
I'll throw. I forgot. I'll throw Shawn Michaels all time.
Yeah, just as I've sat here, um, Dusty, Piper, and then one more, but I'll save him for my guilty pleasure for a specific reason. But they're both favorites of mine. I like either very good technical, as with Flair, but then I also like the talkers, the charismatic. It's back and forth, but as you can see, most of mine are 70s, 80s.
I know we're both talking pretty generally now. We're naming a lot of people. In future episodes, we are going to narrow this down a lot because
Yeah.
we are going to do Mount Rushmore segments.
Yep.
And very specific Mount Rushmores, like all-time Mount Rushmores, cruiserweight Mount Rushmores, etc. Just give an example. I don't know if we're exactly going to do that one, but that's just an example.
Right.
For NXT, I like Authors of Pain.
Yeah.
I just think they're badass. Awesome entrance. I really like. I would save him for my. Since no, he's not technically on NXT anymore, so I'll keep him for a guilty pleasure. I'll
Okay.
let you think about that one. We did talk about him earlier.
Let's say an NXT. I like Cassius Ono. I like Chris Hero. Cassius Ono. I don't understand what they're doing with him. They brought him back in really hard. They had him do the Bobby Roode fight. He lost, and then ever since then, he's kind of just floated. I mean, he's good, and he was supposed to be Roman Reigns, but that's just a rumor.
Johnny Gargano.
Yeah.
Ciampa in NXT. Hopefully they get moved up soon, or at least finish that feud. Well, I forgot they restarted that.
I know for women, you really enjoy all the four horsewomen.
I do.
With Sasha and Bailey being at your top for them.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Bailey's moved on for me.
Yeah.
Like in the top 4.
Like everyone else.
Yes. Well, I really like Bailey in NXT. But yeah, I was gonna say Bailey. Not her. I wouldn't necessarily call it her fault.
Mm-hmm.
But like Kurt Angle's got his Hall of Fame speech. You gotta take chances.
Yeah.
And, she hasn't taken any chances. When neither has Sasha. I think she's on the edge of a heel run.
Mm-hmm.
They're just too scared to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
She should take initiative. Everyone's scared. I feel like people. I don't want to make assumptions here.
They don't want to be booed.
Just from what I've heard from Stone Cold on his podcast and other legends, that everybody's scared backstage to talk to Vince. I think people just need to start taking some initiative.
I think they're scared to talk to Vince, and then a lot of guys like Roddy Piper when he was alive and Michael Hayes have said that people are scared to get booed. They don't want to get heat. They don't want to go out there and
heat makes money.
Yeah.
Well, that makes you a superstar.
Yeah, that's why The Miz is still
The Miz.
at the pinnacle.
I love The Miz. I loved him when everybody even really hated him. When he won the world title the first time, back when he was with Morrison.
Right.
I thought he was great. He gets a reaction. I genuinely hated him for a while, but now I get older, I start to recognize and appreciate his work. Miz, I feel like Miz is going to go down as an all-time great in this era. Maybe not all-time, but in this era, he is one of the best heels WWE's ever had.
The PG/reality era.
Yes. He has everything. If you think about it. He's great in the ring. He's safe. He hasn't really gotten hurt, really.
No.
If it is, he's not gone for 6 months.
Yeah,
he has iconic music, right?
Yep. Iconic catch. He's like Chris Jericho and can make anything a catchphrase.
Yes, he's gonna be great. He's gonna be around for a long time. I'm excited to see the future of him.
Yeah. He'll be the next Jericho. He'll be where he can go away, do his his acting's not great, but I think if he continues, it'll get up there.
New Japan's think here. I really enjoyed because unlike you, I'm not really traversing New Japan territory, but when I seen him in the Cruiserweight Classic,
Okay.
he was good. Or at least our Japan wrestling in general.
Uh-huh.
I really liked Kota Ibushi.
Yeah.
He was good.
He,
So I went back and just from that I went back and watched a lot of his matches that I could get access to. That guy is great. I just think it's so comical that WWE tried throwing this money at him to get him to sign. He's like, my dad's super rich. I don't want that money. I can just do whatever I want.
right.
He's the best wrestler in the world, and he's not wrestling for money.
Yeah, the two best people that they want are actually a tag team called the what are they the Golden Lovers, Kota Ibushi and Kenny Omega.
Kenny Omega, another name. He's. I hope he doesn't come to WWE. I hope they set a trend that to be a big star, you don't have to be under Vince.
Right.
But best of luck to them in that. Let's hear your guilty pleasure though. Let's hear it.
I've got one of them that is considered a guilty pleasure just because of the memes associated with his cream of the crop video or his snapping into a Slim Jim or being Bonesaw for Spider-Man is Macho Man. Macho Man is one of the all-time greats and one of the best performers of the 80s and 90s, but with internet culture, meme culture, you kind of can't say as a wrestling fan, oh, I like the Macho Man, because then, the alleged Stephanie scandals brought up, the hiding Miss Elizabeth's brought up, the videos of his brother are brought up. It's just not. Goldust is another guilty pleasure. Goldust is a very good superstar, but because of his gimmick and then trying to explain that to people. Recently, Bray Wyatt. I've always enjoyed Bray Wyatt, but he's a guilty pleasure because the fact that he just can't win. He comes out and he loses. It was a shock last year when he won the Chamber. I mean, sure, he was just dropping the title to Randy, but the New Age Outlaws are guilty pleasures for me because neither of them are great. Billy Gunn's been fired multiple times for steroids. Road Dogg's not a great wrestler. He's a talker. I mean, the tag team itself is great, but again, it's just one of those that when you're talking about the Attitude Era, you mentioned the New Age Outlaws, and it's like, oh, all right. And then I enjoyed watching Curtis Axel. I loved his dad. I love Kurt Hennig, but I think what they're doing with them is awful. He'll never recover. That's fine, I guess. He'll never recover. And then probably a guilty pleasure is Renee Young. She doesn't do anything, but as an announcer, I think she's great. She should have been on commentary more. Dean Ambrose is one lucky guy. And then to round out my guilty pleasures as a whole, the entire ECW company. Because if you bring that up, you either get people bringing up the fact that it was just hardcore, the WWE CW, or they'll just start, a mini ECW chant. But the show, even when it started as Eastern Championship Wrestling, back in the early 90s, up until about 2001, had some great homegrown talent and talent that wouldn't be allowed to prosper elsewhere, thanks to that genius Paul Heyman. But it's an entire company now that isn't looked upon with the best respect. And I hope one day that changes just because of the crop that came out of it. And one, as you're scrolling through the alumni here, I saw that's a guilty pleasure now just because of gimmick. The New Day. I like the New Day. I've liked the gimmick for years. I had a Bootio shirt.
Not yet. You don't have the New Day socks on.
I have 9 New Day shirts. The Bootios I got back before. I can't say before it was big because obviously it was a shirt, but I was a New Day follower for a long time. And then another one whose shirt I have coming in the mail is Daddy Rusev. The Rusev Day has made me a believer that he will one day get in the main event. That is a lot of guilty pleasures, but they are spread out over time.
The one I was talking about earlier, obviously Buddy Murphy. He's a really big guilty pleasure of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. He's good in the ring. I don't have high expectations for him in 205 Live, but just because like the last name association, I really enjoy Buddy Murphy. I hope he does well. Uh, Another guilty pleasure that I can think of right here off the top of my head probably be James Ellsworth. I know a lot of people liked him when he first started off. He was a big enemy, but then he kind of people started getting a sour taste when he started teaming up with Carmella, and then towards the end of the deal, I thought James Ellsworth was great. I thought everything he did was awesome. I loved that he won the Money in the Bank, the Women's Money in the Bank match. I thought that got him a lot of good heat. People didn't like him after that. Uh, another guilty pleasure. You said it with the New Age Outlaws, but I specifically Billy Gunn. He's always somebody like I was drawn to when I was younger. I had his action figure. My dog chewed his head off of it. So he kind of just became like this is back before I was really big into the wrestling video games. Like around like PS1 days.
Mhm.
I had the first big one I had was the PS2.
Yep.
So back when I had all my wrestling figures,
Uh-huh.
Billy Gunn was my favorite wrestler. I became Billy Gunn. So I had the Mr. Ass pants on. It was great. So he's another one of my guilty pleasures. Scott Steiner. Just for the memes.
Yeah, I would say probably recently. I would say
I love watching Scott Steiner promo compilations.
I'd say the Steiner brothers in the late '80s, early '90s were a fantastic team, and then when that split apart, and Rick started barking more, and then became a principal, and Scott became the big bad booty daddy. It's kind of when the mic work went downhill. Could it be because of a little enhancement got to his brain?
Who knows? Another big guilty pleasure of mine growing up was the Spirit Squad. I thought they were a great heel faction. Well, we had who was it? Mikey and what was the other one?
Kenny.
Kenny. They had a nice little return run and getting a SmackDown Live.
And now Mikey, Kenny, and I believe Johnny are all at Tommy Dreamer's House of Hardcore together as the Squad World Order.
Squad World Order.
Uh-huh.
That's great. I love that. But I'm trying. I can't really think of any more guilty pleasures. I actually I do. I do remember one. She's not with the company anymore. Eva Marie. I thought she had a good character for what she could do. Sad that it got. I don't know. Did she get suspended?
She got suspended because of the drugs, and then recently it turned out she had a worse drug problem than she let on. So, she's getting that fixed. She still models, so I mean everything's all.
She's not coming back.
No.
We made her famous.
Yep.
But it's just then I thought she had a good character for what she had. Is there anything else you want to touch on?
No, I think between everything we said, and then a wholehearted congratulations to Jeff Jarrett for getting out of Impact, and then for getting his deserved Hall of Fame induction. That's about it.
So if you like what you listen to, if you listen to this on YouTube, leave a like, subscribe down below, leave a comment. Tell us who are your all-time, current, and guilty pleasure wrestlers, and congratulate Jeff Jarrett, of course.
Yeah, and say what you thought about the man who made Impact what it was.
Don't say what you want. Congratulate him, okay? Nothing but good things about you, okay? And then if you listen on SoundCloud, give a follow. But once you play, share this around. For going forward, this is probably going to be, we're going to be doing one of the types of these shows every week. We're talking about the news, and have maybe like a little segment towards the end. And then we will have a recap of Raw and SmackDown show. And then on pay-per-view months or weeks, it'll be a little bit easier now they're not dual branded anymore.
Oh, definitely. We won't have to sift through the shit.
Yep. So we'll have one pay-per-view recap show, preview and recap, and then probably some special oddity videos just on YouTube. So make sure you are subscribed on YouTube. We will have history segments. We talk about the history of pro wrestling and stuff like that. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Logan.
And this has been Pro Wrestling Proverbs.